Montana. So it's a very small country, but it's got a lot of people in a very small area. So EcoViva is a nonprofit organization, and we work with community organizations in El Salvador. And we work in two different areas. This one is the Bay of Jiquilisco, and it's got the biggest mangrove forest in Central America. And over here is a place called Barra de Santiago. And we work with a really interesting organization there that's all women, and they do sea turtle conservation. So El Salvador is a small country, but it's got really big volcanoes. It's actually called the land of the volcanoes because there's over 20 volcanoes in El Salvador, but only 2 of them are active. All right, so the sea turtles that we work with mainly are called olive ridley sea turtles. Now, can anyone tell me another species of sea turtle in the world?
Okay, I can see 3 classes. Does anybody have an idea of another species of sea turtle? Maybe the Alaska kids. Do they have sea turtles? I don't know in Alaska.
I see some hands.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute that class, and let's hopefully. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Sparks class.
Hi, I'm Reagan, the leatherback sea turtle.
Absolutely, the leatherback sea turtle. That's a great one.
Okay, let's go on.
There's a hand up in.
Oh, and where is that? Noxon? Okay, just a second. Okay, go ahead, Noxon.
That and the lodgerhead sea turtle.
Hey, that's a great answer. Absolutely. So there are 7 species of sea turtles in the world. And this is, well, here's a human just for size, just so you can kind of see how big they are. But the leatherback, like you said, is one of them. They're loggerheads, like you said, and green sea turtles, flatbacks, hawksbills, Kemp's ridleys, and olive ridleys. So the little one that you saw in the beginning, that's an olive ridley, and it's one of the smallest species of sea turtles in the world. And in El Salvador, there are 4 species of sea turtles that nest on the beaches, and that's the olive ridley, the hawksbill, the green sea turtle, and the biggest of them all, the leatherback. Now, leatherbacks are so big, they're almost the same size as a Volkswagen Beetle. They're enormous. So you can see here, that is a very big turtle. They can weigh up to 2,000 pounds. You know, they are an ancient. Sea turtles are prehistoric and ancient around the times of the dinosaurs. So they're very, very cool.
You're going to stand
very
big. Okay.
All right, so this is an adult olive ridley sea turtle. Now, olive ridleys can grow, they can live to be about 50 years old, and they live mainly out in the open ocean, and they are omnivores. So that means they eat both, you know, fish and like vegetables, like algae in the ocean. And one of their primary foods that they eat are jellyfish. They love to eat jellyfish.
How many of you knew that sea turtles eat jellyfish? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Wow,
All right.
Well informed.
Yeah. Yeah, they're a tasty treat for a sea turtle. They chomp on them. They love eating jellyfish. So most of their lives they live out in the open ocean, like way out to sea, and they travel thousands of miles and migrate in search of food. So they go to different parts of the ocean trying to find food. And the only time they come on shore is when it's time to lay their eggs. So this is a nesting female olive ridley sea turtle coming on shore to lay her eggs. And a female sea turtle doesn't reach the age where she can lay eggs until about 10 years old. And once she's reached that age, she can lay eggs 3 times a year, every other year. So they don't lay eggs every year, they skip a year. There we go. So once they get up onto the beach, they use their back fins to dig a hole. And they dig a hole about 40 inches deep, quite a deep hole. And it's really interesting how they do it. They kind of use their back fins like hands, and they cup the sand and they throw it out, and they dig a big hole, and they lay anywhere from 80 to 120 eggs per nest. And then about 45 to 55 days later, which is the incubation period for a sea turtle. Incubation period means how long it takes for them to hatch. So about 45 to 55 days later, you get baby sea turtles crawling out of the nest and heading into the ocean. Now I want to go back to this female sea turtle. One really interesting thing is that female sea turtles go back to the very same beach where they were born to lay their eggs. Now I want you to talk to your friends and your classmates and think about, how does a sea turtle know how to get back? If they were just a little hatchling when they're born and they crawl out to the open ocean and they don't come back for another 10 years, how do you think they know how to get back to that very same beach where they were born?
Okay, so let's break for just a second and turn and talk to your neighbor about that and see what ideas you come up with. And then we're going to go around and call on the schools. And I want to shout out to Belgrade. Hi, we know you're there. We just can't see you, so we'll be asking you questions also. So take about 30 seconds, and then we'll go around starting with Soldotna, and then go to Belgrade, and so on. Okay, Soldotna, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead and give us a couple of ideas that you've come up with.
And I would say smell could be one of the big factors. We can relate to it because salmon, they go back and they spawn in the same place that they were born using smell about 5 or 6 years later after they were born. Thank you.
Great,
Wow,
thank you.
Great answer. Thank you very much.
Let's go to Belgrade High School freshman science class. What do you guys think?
Volunteer. Jack, go ahead.
Your senses.
So their senses, he's saying their senses. Somebody else?
Oh.
Whoa. That's all we got, Kathleen.
All
Okay,
right, senses, that's very important. That's a key to the answer.
let's go to Noxon and see what their idea is. Noxon, what do you think?
Good.
Okay, what am I doing?
What do you think?
One at a time, please.
My name's Cade, and I think they just get back by muscle memory.
Just by muscle memory. Interesting
memory.
idea. Thanks, Noxon. Let's go to, I believe it's Cleveland, Miss Fisher's class.
What do you think? Say senses if you think that's it.
Senses.
Okay.
Senses, we got another vote
Miss
for
Fisher,
senses.
do you have a camera?
Yeah, but it's not wanting to come on.
Okay, we'll figure that out. Thank you. We know you're there.
Thank you.
Do they see us?
They will.
Go away. Sorry, we're just learning how to do this too. How about Spring Creek? What's your idea?
If
Oh.
they have a really great memory.
Ooh, a good
memory.
memory. Maybe they pass it on.
The nest.
Thank you.
Yeah, memory.
Thank you for your idea. And then we have E. Hamilton. I'm not quite sure whose class that is, and I don't have a microphone for you. So you can type in the chat box if you'd like to respond. So let's go ahead. What's the answer?
Okay, so you know what? We don't really know. So all of your answers could be right. Scientists still haven't quite figured out how sea turtles can find the very exact same beach where they were born. But we definitely think memory and senses have something to do with it. And the leading theory among scientists for how they do this is we think that they have a sixth sense. That's apart from sight and smell and touch. We think they have a magnetic sense, and they can feel the Earth's magnetic fields. And they think they have found some small pieces of metal in the brains of sea turtles, and this might play a role in this ability for them to have like an internal GPS and to be able to find that same beach using a map of magnetic fields of the Earth. But again, we don't really know. So someday, maybe one of you will become a scientist and solve this mystery. Yeah?
Maybe.
Yeah. Oops. All right. So we're back to the hatchlings. So baby sea turtles, once they hatch from their eggs, are called hatchlings. And once they leave the nest, again, this is part of what a bunch of you said is memory. They leave the nest and they walk from the nest, which is usually at the top of the beach, into the water. And what scientists do know is that they have to walk a certain distance to go into the ocean for that memory or that imprinting process to occur. And they found that if a baby sea turtle or a hatchling doesn't walk and just goes, somebody puts them straight into the ocean, they're not going to find their way back. So they remember something about that walk and either the stars or the sun or the moon or the position of things, they remember that, and it imprints on them when they're little itty bitty babies. And that helps them find their way back to that same beach. So in some places, like Costa Rica, there's certain times of the year when females nest in mass. Thousands of female olive ridley sea turtles come on shore. You can see here, every one of these is a female sea turtle coming on shore to lay her eggs. Thousands and thousands. And they coordinate with each other somehow. They coordinate so that they all come on shore on the same night to lay their eggs. So I have another question for you. I want you to think about, how do you think they communicate? Sea turtles can't talk. Only in Finding Nemo can they talk, right? So they can't talk to each other. How do you think they coordinate amongst themselves when to come on shore.
Anna, could you go over that one more time? Because that just kind of blew my mind.
Sure.
They all come on shore one night, is that right?
Yes, in certain places, they will coordinate. And that's actually called an arribada in Spanish, which means the arrival. So they all arrive at a specific beach on the same night to lay their eggs. Thousands of them, all at once. But they can't talk to each other, so how do you think they communicate or coordinate?
Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and start with Belgrade. Are you ready? I'm going to unmute you, and you guys can give us your ideas so far. How do they communicate?
Go ahead. Jack, sound waves.
Sound waves.
Sound waves. Hey, we can see you now, Belgrade. That's awesome.
Anybody else want to give it a go?
One more idea? Okay.
Echolocation. Good idea.
Okay. And
Sound waves and echolocation.
just a reminder, when one person is talking, everybody else needs to be quiet because the microphones really pick it up. Sorry. Okay, let's go to Cleveland with Miss Fisher's class.
What do you want to say? Gotta say it.
We think echolocation.
Oh, they're voting echolocation too. Okay, how about Noxon? What does Noxon think?
My name is Tegan, and magnetic fields.
Thank you, Tegan, for introducing yourself.
Magnetic
Maybe
fields.
magnetic fields. That kind of
Right.
sparked that thought. Let's go to Soldatna. What do you think, Mr. Sparks' class?
Hello, I'm Josiah, and I was thinking maybe it might be pheromones since they're all about to reproduce, that they communicate through pheromones to know what beach to.
It's a
Thank you.
great idea.
Thank you.
Great answer.
Let's go to Spring Creek. What do you think, Spring Creek?
What do you think?
I think certain movements.
Certain movements.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's go ahead. What is it? Do we?
So again, these are unfair questions because we don't know. We don't really know. Again, this mystery. Sea turtles are very mysterious creatures. But one thing we do know is that it usually happens around the full moon. So something about the moon being full instinctually drives these females to come on shore. Now, let's think about why they would want to all come on shore together. So there are a lot of predators for baby sea turtles. A lot of animals eat them, like birds, lizards, crabs, dogs. Once they get in the ocean, a lot of fish, sharks, octopus, a lot of animals eat them. And so it's pretty dangerous out there for a baby sea turtle. And one of the theories about why they all come on shore at the same time is called predator swamping. So if all of a sudden, they all hatch at the same time, the beach is going to be covered in baby sea turtles. So imagine each one of these females lays a nest and 100 baby sea turtles come out at the same time and run for the ocean. The predators aren't going to be able to eat them all. They aren't going to be able to catch every single hatchling. And it gives the other hatchlings a better chance of survival. So it's something that's helped these sea turtle populations survive. They have more chances of making it out into the ocean and growing up to be adults because of this technique.
Hi, we have a question from Noxon that I'm just going to relay. I asked the teachers if they had questions while you were talking to just put them in the chat function so we don't interrupt, but it has to do with predators. What predators do adult sea turtles have?
Okay, so adult sea turtles have a wide range of predators, but mostly larger animals like sharks and killer whales and things like that. But the biggest threat to adult sea turtles, I'll talk about later, is actually us in human activity. So that's a great question, and I'm going to talk more about some of those threats that sea turtles face.
I'm wondering if now would be a good time to just go around and have each group ask one question that they haven't heard yet about sea turtles, and then we could move into the conservation piece. So boys and girls, I know one of the things that the kids in Soldotna have taught me over the last couple years is if you're actively listening, you're thinking about what you've already heard, and then when you get a chance to ask a question, you don't ask something that's already been said. So kind of think about what Anna has talked about already, and then let's just take turns asking one question per school about sea turtle natural characteristics or whatever, and then we'll move on to conservation. So let's go ahead and start with Soldotna. I think you guys are unmuted anyway, so go ahead, Soldotna.
Hi, I'm Violet. Where do you start when you're trying to figure out like certain things about the sea turtles, like what you were saying about the beach and stuff? Thank you.
The things you don't know.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Great question.
Go ahead and answer that.
So you start with a hypothesis, right? You start with a question, like how do sea turtles communicate with each other? And then you test different theories and try to solve those questions using the scientific method. So investigating and trying out different theories about, you know, some answers to those questions.
So I'm going to just add to that a little bit because it's always funny. Kids always ask, when are we ever going to need this that we're learning? That scientific method is for real, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, let's
all the time.
Let's go to Noxon. Noxon, do you have one sea turtle question other than the one you asked?
My name's Nathan, and has there ever been an event where the trash island that's floating in the Pacific has been swarmed by sea turtles because they think it's food?
Oh, interesting.
Okay, yeah, so interesting question, and I'm glad you've heard about that giant Pacific garbage patch. And yes, it is a big problem for sea turtles, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but plastic and marine debris, which is, you know, plastic in the ocean, is very harmful to sea turtles because they think it's food. And, you know, if you try to eat plastic, it's not very good for you. So it can really be harmful to sea turtles.
Awesome. Let's go to Belgrade. And Belgrade, what question do you have about sea turtles?
Hi, I'm Ari. So once they bury their eggs and they compact the sand, what would happen once they compact the sand?
They compact the sand.
Let me clarify. So the question is, they buried the eggs, and then the sand potentially gets compacted by people walking over it, things going over it. What happens? Obviously, the eggs are still buried, but now the sand is hardly compacted over them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that does happen in nature as well. It's not just humans who could compact the sand. So these little hatchlings are quite strong and quite resilient, and they are able to dig their way out of most situations. Now, of course, if, you know, a parking lot were to be built on top of a sea turtle nest, they wouldn't be able to get out of that. But they are able to crawl their way out of compacted sand. But that's a great question. Thank you.
Great. Cleveland, let's go to your question. And I'm not sure whose camera is on their very nice handwriting and notes, but we'd rather see faces than handwriting and notes. So Cleveland, do you have a question?
What is the size and weight of a baby sea turtle?
Thank you.
Baby sea turtles, they are tiny. They're only a few ounces, and they're only about, you know, maybe 3 or 4 inches. They're very, very small, which makes them a prime snack for a lot of animals out there, and it makes them very vulnerable to predators. And that's part of the reason why sea turtles lay so many eggs, is because the chances of survival are pretty low. It's actually only one hatchling in every 1,000 that makes it. So their chances of survival are not very good. But that's why they arrive in such numbers, and that's why they lay so many eggs, is to ensure that at least a few of their hatchlings will make it.
Great. And let's go to Spring Creek. Maybe? Sorry, Spring Creek, just a sec. Okay, go ahead, Spring Creek.
How deep do sea turtles cover their eggs?
Say it again.
How do sea turtles cover their eggs?
Okay, now I think she answered that. So do you have one more question that maybe she didn't answer yet?
How deep are their nests?
How deep?
Okay,
Good,
yeah.
thank you.
So their nests are about that deep. Now they're about 3 feet or so. So they can be pretty deep. And they do use their back flippers to get the sand back into the hole, and they pat it down with their flippers.
Awesome. That's so cool. Okay, let's go ahead and talk conservation now that we know a little bit about sea turtles. And just for reference, we've got about 15 minutes.
Okay, so I'm going to go through quickly. So we've talked about some of the threats to sea turtles, and I'm going to go quickly through these threats. But one of them we talked about, and you mentioned the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and that's plastic pollution. So remember, sea turtles like to eat jellyfish. There's a jellyfish, and there's a sea turtle eating a jellyfish. Now, this is not a jellyfish, and it's a plastic bag. And does it look a lot like a jellyfish?
Thumbs up if you think it looks a lot like the jellyfish, or thumbs down if you think it doesn't. Awesome.
Yeah. So sea turtles can get very confused between plastic bags and jellyfish, and they end up swallowing them, and that's not good for them. Another thing is people used to, it's not as common now, but they used to poach sea turtles for their shells and make things like glasses and jewelry out of their shells. Also, fishing is a big threat to sea turtles, so they get caught in the fishing nets. Sea turtles need to breathe every 30 to 45 minutes, and if they're stuck in a net under the ocean, now they're not going to be able to come up to the surface to breathe, and a lot of times they don't make it out of these nets. So that's a big problem. Also, boat strikes are another problem out in the ocean for sea turtles. Coastal development for agriculture and buildings like hotels on the beach, that can take away the habitat that they need to lay their eggs. So that's another threat that they have. In El Salvador in particular, the biggest threat to sea turtles is poaching for their eggs. So that's people illegally stealing eggs from sea turtle nests, because in places like El Salvador and in Central America, they like to eat sea turtle eggs. It's a local delicacy. And it's for years that's been a traditional job for a lot of people who live along the coasts.
Can I pause right there for just a second? I just want to see how many communities have problems with poachers or deal with poachers. Thumbs up if in your communities poaching animals is a problem.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
In a lot of places.
One of the things we will do, teachers, is send you some discussion questions that Anna has done. One of them is about poaching. So that could be a really good class discussion after this. Yeah, go ahead.
So El Salvador is a pretty poor country. People in El Salvador don't have a lot of money. And, you know, they need to have jobs, right, to feed their families. And taking and selling sea turtle eggs is a job that has traditionally brought income to people. And instead of, criminalizing that behavior or putting these people in jail and taking away their livelihoods, taking away their ability to feed their families, what EcoViva does is we work with the poachers and we actually hire them to help conserve sea turtles. So instead of saying you can't come onto this beach and you can't do your job anymore and you can't feed your family, we're saying, come help us save sea turtles. Come help us protect them. So EcoViva's program for conservation includes poachers. And now they're ex-poachers and they've become sea turtle conservationists. And what they do is they collect the sea turtle eggs and they bring them to hatcheries. And they're fenced in areas just like this, where each little square in the grid is actually a sea turtle nest. So they collect the eggs from the beaches so that other poachers don't get them and so that dogs or other predators can't disturb the nests, and they put them in this safe, enclosed area, this hatchery. And in Barra de Santiago, these are the women from Ambas who take care of the hatchery. And this is my friend Giovanni, who's also a hatchery manager in the Bay of Jiquilisco. And he lives on the beach 24 hours a day during hatching nesting season. And he protects the eggs, makes sure nobody comes in and steals them, makes sure other animals can't get in. And the ex-poachers have now become citizen scientists. They take data from the sea turtles. They take down, what species they are, how big their shells are, and other kind of scientific facts. And they write it down in the hatchery. This is Dora. She's the hatchery manager in Barra de Santiago. And she takes down, the number of eggs, what species, where they were found, how big they were. And that really helps scientists know more and understand more about the species so we can help protect it. Now, one thing that is really interesting actually about sea turtles is that the temperature of the sand actually determines if a sea turtle hatchling is going to be born a boy or a girl. So that's a little different, huh? Yeah, so it's called temperature-dependent sex determination. So if the sand is a certain temperature, if it's a low temperature, only boy sea turtles will be born. And if it's a high temperature, only girl sea turtles will be born. And that poses a particular problem. If the temperature of the sand gets too hot, you're going to only have females. And you wouldn't have any males to help the species reproduce and survive. So what the hatchery managers do is they maintain the temperature at a constant rate that we know, and we've studied this, we know will produce about a 50-50 ratio of males to females. And they do that using the sun. So they take away or put on leaves onto the roof of the hatchery to either warm up the sand or cool it down. And so every day they're taking the temperature of the sand and making sure it's the right temperature so that they get a 50-50 mix of male and female, boy and girl sea turtles. They also do a lot of education. The organizations we work with go into schools, just like yours, and they talk about sea turtles and why they're important and why we should conserve them. And they arrange activities like this, which is a little march on the beach to raise awareness in the community about sea turtles and why they're important and why we should protect them. So 45 days later, 50 days later, roughly, baby olive ridleys are born. And they come out of the nests, and the hatchery managers put them into buckets, just like this, and they carry them to the beach. And they bring their family members, all of the ex-poachers come, and they bring their families, their sons and daughters, and everybody loves to participate in this release of the hatchlings. So there they go. They let the hatchlings out, and remember, they have to walk a certain distance so that they imprint that, they make that mental map and they remember how to get back to this beach. And they crawl into the ocean. So once they get out onto the sand, they kind of don't move for a few seconds and they don't know what to do. But then quite quickly, something kind of clicks in them, and instinct just sends them straight off into the ocean. And it's pretty amazing to see them. And there they go, out into the ocean. All right, so
I got a couple classes that we knew had to take off. So Mr. or Noxons has a couple of things. How many baby sea turtles die every year just in nature?
So again, the survival rate for baby sea turtles is very low. Only 1 in 1,000 actually make it. So a lot of them don't make it. But they're also part of the food chain. They're part of this ecosystem and food web. And a lot of other animals rely on sea turtle hatchlings for food. So
great.
Even though they don't make it, they are contributing to life on this planet.
So let's do a round of questions, if you can stay, for on conservation efforts and kind of what you thought or what surprised you. And we'll go to Soldatna first because I know they're going to scat out of here. So, Soldatna.
All right.
Hi, I'm Allie, and I was wondering, since sea turtles are endangered, do you have like a specific number that sea turtles go down to qualify as endangered? Thank you.
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. There are a lot of factors. There isn't a specific number, but there are several factors that contribute to an animal being listed as endangered. And, once they have, they've, studied and have graphs of how many, pairs or, nesting female sea turtles are needed to kind of restore their population numbers. And when that gets, critically low, then they get listed as endangered. And in fact, all sea turtles are endangered. And some of them more than others, and that has to do with how long it takes them to reach sexual maturity. So a leatherback takes a lot longer to reach sexual maturity, so that makes them more vulnerable and less likely to be able to lay their nests and hatch new generations of leatherback turtles. So that would change the numbers, factors like that. That's a great question. Thank you.
Let's go to Belgrade. Belgrade, do you have a final question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Where do turtles live?
Well,
Like in the ocean, of course.
oh, so his question is it's not necessarily a conservation question. Where do they live in the ocean?
Okay. So they live all across all of our oceans. Sea turtles can be found mostly in the tropics, so mostly warm waters, but not, leatherbacks have been spotted quite far north, like off the coast of Canada in the Atlantic, they've spotted leatherbacks. So they live all over. But what's interesting, and another kind of unknown mystery about sea turtles, is their first 5 or 10 years are known as the lost years, because we don't really know where they go. And, in between hatchlings heading out into the ocean and females, adults, coming back to the beach, we don't really know where they go. So juveniles, a sea turtle that may be about this big, are not very frequently spotted. So that's another interesting question for a young scientist to solve, is where do they go?
Sounds like a lot of things we could send these kids out in the world to figure out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland, one final question.
In the hatcheries, how many eggs do they have for the male side, and how many eggs do they have for the female side?
Interesting.
Yeah, good question. So what we try to do is keep the temperature at in a certain range. So between about 81 degrees Fahrenheit and 89 degrees Fahrenheit. And that range has shown to produce about half and half females and males. So in a typical nest, you've got about 100 hatchlings. So you would get about 50 females and 50 males if we can maintain that temperature in between 81 and 89 degrees.
Great. And one final question from Spring Creek. Hello. I see. You got it? Okay. And I know Miss Hamilton, I'm going to unmute you.
Okay, bye, Saldatna.
Bye, Saldatna.
Great questions. Thank you so much.
Miss Hamilton, did you have any questions? I think that's okay. Well, boys and girls, thank you so much. Those of you that are able to stay on, thank you so much, and thank you so much for coming.
Yeah,
we appreciate it.
Thank you for having
and we'll
me.
send you some more questions to talk about in your classrooms. But thanks for joining us today. Bye.
Bye. Have a great day. Thank you.